Hello and welcome to the Mel Carmine Show. We are so blessed today to have somebody very special with us. We have got Sue Sproul, who is a Canadian, and she has quite an incredible story with an impeccable career of employment with Air Canada for many years. She brought a harassment suit against the airlines, and what transpired after that is truly incredible. So she's going to tell us her story today. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Valentina.
Yeah. So tell me, how's life in Canada these days?
Oof. You don't have enough of the 45 minutes to talk about everything bad in Canada. But one thing that transpire is that our court systems are really unfair, letting out criminals and punishing whistleblowers, victims of corruption, and people doing mischief. Imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm in New York and we're dealing with a lot of those things too, and we can only hope as more and more people awaken to what's going on and the vibration is raised and more people become that much more aware that a lot of this, and we see it, it's starting to come to the forefront. The exposure is happening, but unfortunately, we're in a war of good and evil, and there's a lot of casualties. And, those of us who've been affected, like yourself, it just feels like, time is going way too slow. So why don't we start with, giving our audience a little bit of a background as far as what happened to you, and then, kind of leading up to where you are today.
Okay, thank you very much. I started my airline career in 1985 while I was in college, and I also played my college basketball team. I thought it was going to be a summer job, but it ended up being a career because I finished my education in college. I did some university, and I decided to stay on. I've worked all over the place, but I started in Mirabel Airport in Montreal, Dorval Cargo. I even worked in the Great North in Iqaluit, Northwest Territories at the time, now is the Nunavut. And since 1995, I've been in the Montreal call centers. And I've always been a union rep for the union. At the time, it was CAW, the Canadian Auto Worker Union, that became in 2013 Unifor. That's the big, mega corrupt criminal union that its president, Jerry Diaz, was distributing during COVID brown paper bags with 50K in it. But that has nothing to do with my story. My story starts in 2011. I'm in the Montreal call center. I'm the health and safety union rep. I've been a union rep for over 20 something years and never had an issue. And we did not have an evacuation plan in our call center. And that year, between August 2011 and 8 February 2012, we had three major evacuations for weather, generator problems, seeping gas in the garages. The thing is, it's not Air Canada's fault these events happen, but it went down the road that it got more severe, that something in the higher positions ended up looking bad, and they started harassing me in my position as the health and safety rep because I was pushing for a call center evacuation plan. I was pushing for training in first aid, and then also three very senior, and the director of the Montreal call center were sexual predators, career bullies, and alcoholics, and certain ones, and another one with a big breast fetish. Sorry, I was going to say something less classy, and I caught myself. And anyways, I never even had issues with these guys, but because I did my job as the health and safety rep, I became a target. And I had to put in a formal complaint for harassment in May 2012. At the time I did not know, but we were a lot of people. There was 24 external investigations done with Kashil's Consulting in Mississauga, Toronto, across the country within the Air Canada outfit. And those are only the ones who complained. Now I know it's statistics. It's 1 out of 10 only that makes a formal complaint. Most people find a way to resolve. I tried to transfer. I tried to go work else places. I tried everything. I was a target. They wanted me out. I fell off a step ladder Christmas 2010. I was injured in my lower back and they took advantage. Anyways, they did horrible things. They've all been proven. 28 July 2012, this external investigation comes out, mine. Even though there's been 24, I did not know that there was 24 going on at the time. They told me I was in a unique, complex, believe it or not, that was my union words, situation, and I had to leave the workplace. Are you sure you want to put in a formal complaint? I didn't feel the support of my union from the get-go, and I'm talking about friends here,
So that was
Valentina.
going to be my question. So, I mean to cut you off, but I'm going to interject just to be clear. So, the union wasn't protecting you either. I mean, that's why we have our unions, hopefully, right? And at that point, your assessment and belief of why they wanted to get rid of you is because you were kind of bringing all this out to the forefront, not just the sexual harassment, but also the conditions under which people were working under. Okay.
But I did not know that there was a bigger problem. I thought it was just local, and I thought it was only regarding a few individuals because they're really good at hiding these things. It's only with an access of information through Ottawa, and the numbers we have as 467 victims is the number of 31st December 2016. So we suspect that the number is much higher right now, but without putting through another Access to Information Act request, I don't have the numbers, so I can only go by what I have proof of. And I've also testified in a colleague of Toronto in 2018, 2019, and they use the same modus operandi. It doesn't matter which union, because at Air Canada, we have Unifor, we have CUPE, we have CALPA, we have IAM. They're all the major Canadian unions are with different groups of employees, but they all operate the same way. They all work together. And what happened in my situation, I did not know because I feel I was the only one. I didn't know there was other victims. Now I know. They
So they
impose
had you in this
non-disclosure.
isolation feeling. So you
I
felt
went off
very,
sick, yes, because they tormented me psychologically, that it made me sick. I lasted from 2011 till May 2012. But after a year and a half of abuse, so much a human can take, and I'm not any different than any other person. They got me sick, psychiatrically sick, that I had to go off work. I was not sleeping. I wasn't doing well, like a lot of people, victims of abuse go through. And I was put on a lot of medication. And then I was put through 10 psychiatric evaluations. The abusers were never and had to do anything. They kept their jobs a little bit longer. They hid the investigation, the company and the union. And we have the WSIB, it's like workers' compensation for injured workers in Canada, but in Quebec, it's called CNSST. It's a big, big, big mega organization that basically, in the end, you end up with rulings of a court, of an administrative workers' court,
okay.
that are non-binding. And because you went through this type of legal process with them, you lose your rights to now sue your abusers if you don't have an outcome. And in my case, when you have a union, you're in a legal loophole because technically my union should have defended my rights. I ended up in a federal arbitration with Mr. Brian Keller that concluded 28th of November 2018. Because my union presented the wrong article of my collective agreement, he terminated my employment administratively, but he couldn't leave silence that he was dealing with a long-term employee with an impeccable work record, and that is it. In there, there's even proof of my director that terminated my employment, perjury. He wrote it in there that in the morning she testifies was she read my ruling and it was her sole decision to terminate my employment. And that's a person I personally trained when she transferred into my call center, and that she got the job of the director because the director lost his job because of my case. I complained about him. Anyways, long story short, I'm now 10 years since the 14th of September without revenues. I am at home since the 14th of June 2012. I am 20 months, pretty soon 21 months, medication free. I stopped taking all medication. Oh, I'm not, yeah, I did make a year. And the 5th of February, 2024. And that's the biggest achievement. And that's what is helping me getting through the next steps of healing, helping others, and also being able to do interviews because all the types of medication they put you on kind of incapacitates you and make it very difficult to control your emotions.
So I have a question. So the evaluations, the psychological evaluations that you received, were those um, initiated or done by, within the employer? Like, in other words, this was
Employer, union, and the workers' compensation outfits. They were all, by the way, all my evaluations were favorable evaluations. That's what's the most disappointing or outrageous is that they admitted in the end they had absolutely nothing against me. Even at the time in when I put in my first termination letter, because I got two, believe it or not, through FedEx here in Canada, they even in my termination letter, they accused me of lacking loyalty, respect, and civility, when in reality, that's exactly what they did to me because I put my termination letter on our internal website of employees, unionized employees, to let them know that I was awaiting an arbitration to go back to work and get a return to work. And instead, they terminated my employment. And all that because I said no to a 3-year salary deal and taking my pension in 2017 when I had a ruling that said due to all these evaluations, take Mrs. Sproul back to work on a return to like a progressive return to work. It wasn't nothing special. When a woman would be off for a year or two off of pregnancy leave and come back to work, we put her on a progressive of a couple of weeks, couple of months, so that you get back into the beat to go back full time. They tried to impose on me no support while I had full anxiety, panic attacks, nervousness, PTSD out the wazoo at the time. I could barely contain my emotions, and they wanted me back full time. If not, they wanted my resignation. They tried to manipulate me in every shape and way and form, even having the union district chair of the Eastern Canada Bargaining Committee, Benoit Lapointe, that's now a director at another corrupt union here in Quebec, FTQ. His name's Benoit Lapointe. He tried to come here because he knew my husband wanted me to settle and just leave because in 2017, it was already a long time they were putting me through this. So he had enough of it. He just said, you know what, Sue, take the money, sign the non-disclosure, and get on with your life. I said, I can't. I did nothing wrong. And
right.
I said, if I accept this, what are they going to do to the next person?
So
And
let
then
me,
I found out we were so many.
yeah. And so a couple of questions. So you you took this to your union first, right? That is what happened with the union because as you said, they're corrupt, so they're not really working for the.
Yeah, but I didn't know at the time. I
Right,
thought
right,
I
right.
acted in good faith and
Of
on
course.
everything.
Yeah. And then from there, has this has gone into the courts? Like, in other words, you
Oh,
took,
yes. Yeah.
so after go ahead.
Sorry, I just realized the question you're going through. I cannot find a lawyer in Canada. There's 136,000 lawyers in my province, Quebec. There's 28,000. Very few take cases like mine. My Ontario, I have a lawyer in Ontario that I got through a captain of Air Canada out west, Mr. Robert Hall, God bless his heart, that knew people in this law firm because he's also a lawyer on top of being an Air Canada pilot. He's retired today and he helped many victims. I only got a representation for my human rights case that is pending in the courts. They have it on their desk since last November 2024. It took 5 years to get it in because of all kinds of rules and regulations. And we had the pandemic, that delayed all the court proceedings.
Sure.
And one of the rulings in my to submit that even the lawyer that only does human rights cases, the initial complaint cannot be more than 3 pages. But guess how many pages Air Canada answered with? There's no limitation. 63, Valentina, and 63 of lies of things that are completely fabricated. And they didn't have their main lawyer or legal department sign this piece of filth. They had a lower level paralegal, Vanessa Marotta, somebody I know, and I worked with their sister since 1995 in the Montreal call center, that knows me, knows my story, knows we're hundreds, if not thousands. And she accepted to put her name on that. And I may not get accepted based on that 63 pages of documents that we're still waiting, that I've asked my lawyer. I send him an email once a month, have any news, any news. And in here in Quebec, I would need to find a lawyer that is fully bilingual, because half my case is in French, half my case is in English. All of the workers' comp is in French, all the arbitration is in English, and Air Canada takes advantage also of these provincial rules and federal rules, because as a transportation uh, a corporation, being the airline industry, they're ruled under federal rule. But
Okay.
when it comes to workers' laws, there's provincial and federal, and
Okay.
they take advantage of employees on all fronts.
Okay, so just so everybody understands, like we know um what was done in terms of that they did not want your story to come out, and they kind of corroborated everything between themselves, right, to prove that you were, I mean, I guess what they're trying to show is that you were not the model employee that you were, and
They
that
tried,
that
but they
it's,
weren't able to do that. And
yeah.
for a miracle, I had a thick file about this sick,
Yeah.
and everything is commendations, because I've done training, I've been customer service
How long were
expert.
you with Air Canada?
I started in 1985, but in 3rd March 1988, when my starting date, where I started contributing to my pension that they stole from me for refusing that non-disclosure.
Okay. And is that the point at which you decided, when you weren't willing to settle under their terms, which was basically admitting that you were wrong, right? And lying about
The
the truth.
non-disclosure said that the union and the company treated with the utmost respect, and I'm satisfied with all the
Yeah.
I'm putting it in my words there because it's very lingual jumble, but I
Sure.
have a copy of it. But it basically says that they've almost brought out the red carpet, and I'm extremely satisfied of everything they've done for me. And I
Right.
had to sign that if I wanted my pension. And they started with 1 year salary, that's the industry standard, 2 year salaries for lower management, and 3 year salaries upper management. But they started at 1 year, then 2 years, and then I called the Canadian Human Rights Commission. They were sent 2 letters to the union and to the company. They ignored that. I also called medias. By the way, all the Canadian press industry is unionized with Unifor. And the CRTC, that's the bill of law that regulates our news and everything we have on TV. It's called the CRTC. The laws were changed under Prime Minister Trudeau in 2016 or 17. There's a lot of information I have to retain. But anyways, now our news outlets are no longer have to say the truth like you have in the States under Obama, and I think in 2013 modified something in the laws.
Yeah.
It's now only entertainment and opinion pieces. They don't talk about these cases. I am banned, shadow banned, and even the article of Huffington Post, if you do a Google of harassment, first word, Air Canada, second word, you find it very easily in the first page of Google. But if I try to share it on Facebook, it's it's not authorized in Canada, even though it was done as a newspaper in Quebec.
Yeah.
And I had another one I did in 2018, November, with a UK podcaster similar to you, a smaller network. And it was a 30-minute thing, and it disappeared from the internet completely. I am blocked and banned by journalists, activists, human rights, politicians, all medias, all journalists, anything related to Air Canada or Unifor. It's my story is not out there, but it's not just me. And I'm only one of, and they're currently still abusing people that I'm helping. One that got recently in the last month, two of them just here in Montreal. That doesn't even count all the rest across the country. We're 35,000 employees at Air Canada approximately. I may have that number off though. But just here in Montreal, plus there's suicides, people that died in complete indifference, fighting with the insurance to get their medication for their cancer treatments, not being given their benefits. The list is so long, but just my story, if it was just mine, is still sufficient because my case, the external investigation Air Canada commanded in June 2012, was completed 28 July 2012. And there's the conclusion letter because I got the conclusion letter in late 2012, but the actual complete investigation only with a court ruling in late 2016. The important phrase in there is due to the preponderance of the evidence, has been proven that Mrs. Sproul was subject by Mr. Mario Dirienzo and Mr. Bernard Milbert for um, workplace harassment, workplace conflict, and a toxic work environment or
Toxic.
poison work environment, one or the other. But at those, we're talking 2012. I had no idea this was a across the board problem and almost every unionized workplace. And it's even worse now. But my case could have been solved with an apology, retiring these clowns because they were career bullies. And like I said at the beginning, not very good people. They should, anyways, I'm not here to be mean with my colleagues. I'm trying to help the colleagues that are still there. And my colleagues that are still there that are suffering and still being abused, they cannot even be friends with me on Facebook.
Oh,
They support me in the shadows because the ones who did that no longer do, very few, and some are retired, even retirees that were commenting on my posts, they suspended their pension and they made them to not get involved in company business if they didn't want to have reprisal. Basically, they don't use those words, but it's
yeah.
if you don't do what we tell you, we will punish you for daring to try to help somebody else. But I never knew this because that was always my job and I never had any problems before.
Well, this leads into a much bigger problem. And of course, you're aware that on September 9th of this year, we launched our Dear Mr. President movie, which Mel Carmine, wrote and directed, and I'm co-producer, as well as Carol Maureen Friesen. And, you know, we talk about this problem of censorship. And in many ways, that's what you're a victim of, because if people are silencing your ability to tell your story and get out there, right? If they're silencing people who are supporting you, and if the unions are in bed and the media and they're all working in conjunction with one another, right, including big tech, then it's absolutely all about censorship because your voice can't be heard. And that's one of the things this movie is about. And that's why it was important for us to hear your story because um, people that are being censored, they're not just being censored for political positions it's
Exactly.
anything that goes against the the
The
um
powers that be.
the
I always
powers
say the
that
powers
be and
that
what
be.
they feel that they should not be responsible for, take responsibility for, to rectify these situations. I want to just put in a little plug because our documentary is really gaining traction, and we just did translation of the movie into a whole variety of languages, including French.
Oh, great.
So
I'll share it. Send it to me. I'll
yes.
share
So
it.
if all you need to do is, because it's completely free, there's no charge, no barriers to entry. You just need to go to or share Dear Mr. MR President.net. And right there, you can watch the movie and you can select the language. We've translated it into not only French, but Italian, Spanish, German,
Wow.
Cantonese, Mandarin. I believe Russian is coming out. I hope I didn't forget one of the languages. And so this enables us to be able to really get it out and make people more aware. Now, I had a question.
Go ahead.
When it comes to this broad-based harassment and then the bullying that happens, at the time of the harassment, but not only that, it's lingering because now you're being bullied by the powers that are supposed to be protecting you. is there an ability to do a class action with everybody? Are people reluctant? What's happening with regard to that? Because it sounds like it goes pretty far and wide.
The thing to is one of the rules and regulations of our Canadian courts to be able to open up a class action, you have to have a lawyer willing to file it on behalf of the victims. I would be able to file one just with my case and with the access to information
Yeah.
that shows that there are 467. Air Canada has thousands, if not multiple thousands, of complaints at the Canadian Human Rights. That also is, it flabbergasted me. It what got me sick is the excess evil that they put against me because I thought they were a good employer, winning prestigious awards, best employer, best airline, best. I believed it because I worked there and I never had any problems.
Of
But
course.
everything's hidden with non-disclosures. And the reason why I am the only one that's out there doing interviews is because everybody else has signed non-disclosures or they cannot afford to have their pension or their salary or lose their job and everything suspended. Even the two that I'm helping, I almost said something. I have to be careful because they're watching me. I've been surveyed. They come into my garbage on a regular basis, but I'm lucky. I'm friends with all my neighbors and they have it all on cameras. And they also came with company vehicles spying on me. And they've tried so hard to try to find something that was unrelated. And they've spent so much money to destroy my life when all I did is my job with diligence, like I always did. I didn't do anything special. I just did my job.
Yeah.
And because I refused to prostitute myself, I'm sorry I use that word because that's how I see that now. I got severely punished in my case, could crack open the Canadian justice system, the Canadian Labor Board, and believe it or not, the Canadian Relations Industrial Board, that's where you do complaints when your unions and your corporations are not respecting your court rulings. It's an ex-Air Canada main lawyer that is now in charge of that organization. How can you even expect? I was wondering why I cannot get a call back from them. I cannot get documentation. I can't get anything. And they're like a government organization supposed to help people like me. The ombudsman blocked me on all social media. The justice minister here in my province federally. It's unbelievable. And every time I couldn't understand why until I found out the Canadian government owns a lot of shares into Air Canada. The main lawyer counselors are also work or are or related to government laws and everything. The Air Canada CEO Colin Revenescu has been involved since 1988, and he's also the Ottawa Capital University honorary chancellor of the law faculty. So these are all people with a lot of power. And I did not know these things in the background. And also, currently, Mr. Mark Carney, our current Prime Minister, even if I don't find him legitimate, that's my personal opinion. I think our elections are compromised like everywhere else because he had to bus in people and select the people to attend his rallies. So I don't see how anyways, it's not pertinent. But he owns also through Brookfield apparently 22 or 28% of Air Canada shares. So they're all in conflict of interest. And also, I worked the VIP desk at Air Canada. Every single politician, journalist of Canada are VIPs with Air Canada. So are they going to go and bite the hand that feeds them, that they get perks and privileges from? And I've never thought that there was this amount of unethical, immoral, cruel, disgusting humans working in the shadows of Air Canada. And to be honest, I don't even know who are my villains.
Yeah. Well, that's I think the problem, we're in this war at this point of good and evil, and it is a war. And it's very, very, look, it's like being in a relationship where you are so betrayed and you can't believe that the person you thought you knew could actually do these very nefarious things. I mean, you were in a relationship with this company and you gave yourself and your honesty and your hard work. Now, what what are you anticipating is going to happen next? You said that you just, as of, I believe you said it took what?
5 years to put in my
5 years
complaint. To,
to
yeah.
get it into the court. So now what are you being told is sort of the next step? Is there a length of time that you
The,
still have to wait?
the feeling I have through
Yeah,
talking other people that are in those spheres, because that's not my expertise,
sure.
they're going to try to find any excuse, maybe delay paperwork, anything. They do not want to have my case being heard because I told them during my arbitration with all the Air Canada lawyers and all the union lawyers and also the wife of the president, Leslie Diaz,
Yeah,
if they didn't come up to some resolution that would treat me with courtesy and human decency, nothing special, that I would go to the Canadian Human Rights and I would go to the Supreme Court of Canada. But I said that in my arbitration, thinking that our institutions were ethical.
yeah,
And when I got out of that arbitration, the arbitrator even told me he rarely speaks to any parties when he's hearing these things, but he wanted to address me to congratulation me on my honesty, my blah, 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 blah. Anyways, participating, doing the right thing, everything. And he even put his hand on my shoulder in the hallway and ran away. But I don't remember that because I was under a lot of stress, but it was my husband and my brother on each side of me. So, and my friends that were there were 15 to 20 people. At each time I had an audience with the arbitrator or with the workers' comp or everything, I always had people attend. They tried to say that those things were confidential as well until I asked them, where does it say that? So a lot of people are being lied to by their employer,
yeah,
by their own representation, and I'm telling you, Valentina, I really didn't do anything special. But however, I never thought that just doing my job, just being a good employee, just protecting my colleagues, because this time it touched management. I did not know there was like an unspoken rule. You never complain about management. But we were talking lower end, even though he was the Montreal call center. Anyways, they've spent so much money to destroy my life and still currently are, because if it wasn't for the love of my husband and my family and friends, I'm not sure I would be in the position I am. I have a roof and I have food. I don't have anything else. I lost everything. But for whatever reason, and I think it's God that helps me, and that's a personal opinion again.
yeah, of
I
course.
without my faith, I would not have been able to get through this.
Yeah. Well, look, it sounds like, and of course, maybe we could do a follow-up as you get, but of course, the light worker spiritual side of me and holistic coach says that um these kind of situations are meant to break us when they're happening. This is almost like a bad divorce, if you liken it to a relationship. And I think what you're going through is what a lot of people are going through because there's a lot of realization and a lot of disclosure about the systems that we've all been dealing with that we thought were working for us. And then we realized they're working against us, and we can name a gazillion different areas
That's what
of our
helped me
life.
start my healing. When
Yeah,
I started listening to other people encountering horrible stories that should not be in our society, it took a long time for my brain and my heart to realize that yes, I was a victim, but now I'm no longer a victim. I am somebody that's standing up for what is right with so many others. I have hope. And even now, I remember being very angry and bitter at the prostitutes that accepted to do this. I pray for them because one day they're going to be concerned too, and it's going to break them. And on top of it, they'll have to live with the consequences of being to have like Vanessa Marotta. I don't know how she can sleep at night knowing she destroyed so many lives of other women. When it's women doing this to other women, I find it so vile. The male counterparts, I'm sorry. I love my husband. I know there's good and bad men, just like good and bad women. But when it's another woman doing something like this to another woman, when we know women are already like all kinds of other minorities, when you want to try to divide things, I find it extremely disgusting. I'm going to use that word
Yeah.
because I don't want to be angry at them anymore. I really want to, and you know what? I'll even tell them, I pray for your heart because you're going to have to deal with the decisions you've made and destroying the lives because there's people that died. I'm still alive, but there's been so many suicides, heart attacks, people dying in bathrooms that they had terminated them because they were looking for them during their shift to realize 6 hours later the person was dead in an airport bathroom.
That's so absolutely awful. I think what you're doing though is very brave. I think the bravest part of the whole thing is that you've stayed true to yourself and you are, helping others. But I do believe that part of what we're called to do when we have these kinds of, challenges, let's put it that way. It may not say it all, but these challenges, I think we're meant to just keep that vibration as high as we can and stay in that love vibration because that is what's going to more and more reveal a lot of the evil. And then, over time, what we're doing, what you're doing, is going to be able to allow this whole system to collapse, and obviously it's not just the employer that you're dealing with, the former employer that you're dealing with, or the unions, it's the system,
It's everything.
it's the whole system. I tell you, we're here. I think part of the issue is like we said, I keep going back to it. It's the censorship because with the ability, whatever form that comes in, obviously our movie was more about, digital censorship, which you are dealing with. It's not like you're not, but censorship goes so far. Now, if the digital censorship was not there, your story would be able to be told more and not controlled as much. So I think what you're doing is really brave and really smart to talk to as many podcasters and, go kind of the alternative route to, to
I
tell
have
your
no
story.
choice. There's
Yeah,
nobody
and
else giving us visibility. And
so
thank you
many people
so
do
much,
that.
huh?
Yeah, so many people do that because that's the new media and that's the new way that we have to support one another, in this system that we're all becoming awakened about. Any last remarks? And by the way, I didn't want to correct you in the middle. It's Elisa Valentino. So it's
Oh my God,
Elisa.
I've been calling you Valentina
That's
for all
okay.
these weeks. I love Elisa. It makes me think, I know we shouldn't like Disney anymore, but I see you as one of those Disney
Oh,
princesses. So-
well,
No, no, I like it. It suits you. It suits you way more than Valentina, actually.
thank
So you
you.
see the missing. I know I wanted to mention that also currently in Canada, the point that we have 338 supposedly democratically elected MPs in our House of Commons, we have 12 that have been recognized as being foreign agents and spies, and that our CSIS are protecting them for national security, but letting them still occupy a position of power while they're foreign agents. And the government currently is trying to pass C2, C2, C3, C8, and C9. And these give themselves all kinds of powers that I could lose all my social media because I critique the government, even though I'm a small, ordinary citizen. And they will silence all the victims of corruption and the whistleblowers in Canada. And if you permit me, I would like to mention a few Canadian victims of corruption and honorable, courageous whistleblowers. Kirk Reese of the Canadian Military Ranger from Lac La Ronge, that exposed the Trudeau government, money laundering, drug trafficking, and all kinds of really awful things with the First Nation band leaders in cahoots with them. So it's not just government, it's any type of leader of everything. And that's a good example. Then you have Gloriane Blais. She was disbarred to be a lawyer because she was one of the only lawyers defending victims and trying to bring up corruption. So that's another example. Then you have Mylène Hébert. They're trying to put her in jail. She's a victim of human trafficking from the Child Protective Services here in Quebec. Then you have Luc Sabourin. He's a Canadian Border Services whistleblower. Then you have Dr. Béliveau. That's a doctor here in Quebec that decided to retire. And even in retirement, they're still trying to sue him and silence him because he's helping people with a holistic way of looking at healing. Then you have Patrick Provost, he's a university teacher. And then I could name you a whole list, and that's why I will refrain now, of honorable, ordinary citizens and ordinary jobs that just stood up for their children, for their family, and for just in our court systems being abused. And we have Tamara Leach and Chris Barber mischief. They're trying to put them in jail when there's murderers, carjackers, knife attackers, rapists, pedophile rapists that are let out on the street with no bail, sometimes 1 cent bail, when we don't even have the 1 cent anymore in Canada. It's 5 cents the minimum. And we also have a judge in BC recently that gave a very small minimum ruling to a man because he had a very modest collection of pedophile pornography.
Hmm.
That's in a federal ruling. Anyways, I could go on.
I
I
know,
know
I
all
know.
these stories are outrageous, disgusting, crazy,
Yeah.
but it helped me understand that I'm a small drop in all that. But it just proves to the fact either it's a small case, something that could have been resolved with an apology and decency and courtesy, to things as horrible as pedophiles, human trafficking, murderers, and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's institutional corruption in Canada. Our law enforcement, our military, our RCMP, our government, our police officers, and I speak to a lot of them. They looked at, I've seen so many people look me in the eyes and bow their head in shame, but say nothing because they can't afford not to have the hair
Well, that's the
reason.
trap, and that's why we have to pray and for these people that feel that they have no choice, I'm talking about victims who feel like they have no choice, in many ways. And I guess the people that don't stand up too, it's a very big system that we're bucking. But I do think what you're doing is amazing. And I think, we will talk off camera because I think there's a lot of really great podcasters that would love to, have you tell their story and start to,
Oh, the help would be so appreciated. You have no idea
yeah,
how I'm in Quebec and I know a lot of the podcasters and everything because I go support other people. I tell them my story, even Rebel News. I know Alexa Lavoie. I have her personal cell phone number, but I don't want to push anybody because I know they're getting political and union pressure not to touch certain stories. If not, I don't know how it works in that sphere, but it's obvious because in a normal world, my story, not because it's me, but I mean all the victims of Air Canada, just that,
yeah,
because of the prestigious airline that is Air Canada, it would be all over the place. But like the ostriches, like right now, they're trying to call, like I could go on and on, but all these stories and these court cases are helping me open my eyes, open my heart, because I would not even believed my own story 15 years ago if I hadn't
sure,
been through it. And
yeah,
that's what makes it a lot difficult for people. They have a hard time believing that this can be true because why aren't the medias talking about it? But it's because the medias are controlled by the same unions
yeah,
doing this to us.
yeah,
But they can't grasp that. And I couldn't either before. And right now in Canada, all the victims of corruption and all the whistleblowers are being punished, censored, silenced, and with the laws they're trying to pass, it's obvious they're targeting people like us. And
yeah,
I'm really grateful because the longer they do this to me, because my case could be the crack to open up, to give a voice to a lot of others that I've been speaking with in the last 5 years. Mine is small and easy to explain, and some are not, and some
sure,
are very heavy duty things, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we are punishing severely, destroying, inhumane. I don't have words anymore for what our justice system, our government, and the people that are supposed to be protecting us are doing to us. And it has to stop. And if the longer they do this to me, they're all going to look extremely bad because I'm not lying, because if I was lying, they would have come after me a long time ago. I've been trying to expose this since 2017, 18, I started.
Yeah.
And for they could sue me for libel and defamation, but they don't. How could they explain to a judge that she should be paying, I should be paying Air Canada for destroying their reputation when they stole everything from me, including my own co-paid pension that I started contributing to on the 3rd of March 1988. And Elisa, I thank you for giving me a voice and
Of
to
course.
also give a voice to my colleagues, because every time I do something like this, I get a lot of messages and text messages telling me, thank you, Sue. I regret signing these non-disclosures. I wish I could speak up, but I feel that maybe one day, because non-disclosure agreements were never meant to cover up corruption, and especially not sexual harassment and psychological harassment. And these non-disclosure agreements should be null and void, and actually they should be penalized for imposing that on victims. But that's another battle.
Yeah, that's another battle, and we take one step at a time. Well, thank you for sharing your story. I think that you're an example to a lot of people, and sometimes we're called to do these things and have these, you know, we can argue that we came here to do this, right? The challenges that we're up against because we took on that mission to come here and fight those battles. But I will say, please, take a look at
Yes,
dearmrpresident.net
I will
and
definitely.
spread the word around because this is the whole point. It started out, as you'll see when you watch the movie, as a conversation that we had on a podcast, like to get a letter in front of President Trump to say, let's end this censorship that affects and then has tentacles in so many different areas. And so then from there, it became an actual documentary. And I think the more people that see, especially with the 45 podcasters and their stories, we watch them, we see their shows, and we don't realize how they've been deplatformed, demonetized, their content has been taken down and stolen. So I think it brings some a sense of like camaraderie that we're all victims in this, and we all the power
All the
we have to
ordinary
band
citizens of
together.
this world are
Yeah,
equal. That's how I see it. We all want the same things. Look,
yeah,
I traveled all my life and I saw people who just want peace,
yeah,
a home, a family, to live well, and what they're doing around the world. But it also took me a while to realize that is extremely evil. And you are correct. I am also in agreement. We are in a war of good versus evil. I had no idea I would be a drop in there, but I feel that by dividing us, they make our stories and our situation unique and complex for nothing. But by uniting everybody together, we will become a strong voice. And I have hope that other people find the courage, even though they may lose salary, their job, and everything. Because once the dominoes start falling, I have hope that a lot of others of my colleagues will come
yeah,
forward in public instead of just in the shadows supporting me. And that's my greatest hope. But I totally understand and forgive anybody that doesn't have the financial means, because I'm lucky. I don't have children at home. I don't have responsibilities. But I understand that some are divorced, are single moms, have kids that are also in school age and everything, have a lot of financial responsibilities, and they cannot go through the psychological torture
yeah.
and financial
And the
torture.
financial, yeah, it's true.
And I am grateful to everybody that helps us. And if the Canadian government gets some pressure, because they do own shares of Air Canada, and they're suppressing and they're letting Air Canada continue to abuse to this day in complete indifference, and it has to stop. But it has to stop everywhere. But
Yeah.
once the ball starts going for maybe one case, maybe others will also get the justice they deserve.
Yeah, yeah, and you're in it for the long haul. Well, thank you again. Thanks everyone for watching the Mel Carmine Show with me, Elisa V. And Sue, God bless you, and
God bless you
we
all,
will
and
follow
thank
your
you.
story and we'll see where you are, okay?
Thank you.
Bye-bye.